So let's start with the surprise quiz, since this is a university. What does a floodplain do sooner or later?
Flooded.
All right.
Flooded already. 4 times.
It floods, and I can't help but wonder why this is so difficult for some politicians, policymakers, and developers to understand. I'm going to give you a little bit of a different perspective and look at our major 21st century woe, which is global warming. And we are at an inflection point on the exponential temperature curve. It's a wild, dizzying ride where we paid for the ticket that's taking us perilously towards an unlivable Earth. The messages from nature are pretty clear, however. But what we don't really grasp very well is future heat. And so we look at the future not as the exponential curve, but as a line straight out. We are as bad as it is now. That's what the future will look like. It's hard to imagine it worse. So global temperatures have barely reached 1 degree centigrade and all hell is breaking loose. How are we doing? That's how we're doing. When I started 20 years ago, we were at around 370 parts per million. But it's important to note that while greenhouse gases are potentially a lethal problem, they are a symptom, not a root cause of planetary warming. Root causes are devastation of biodiversity and loss of growth of green plants in the oceans and on millions of acres, billions of acres of land worldwide. Natural systems are more than capable of handling these overloads when fully functional, and we know how to do this. So there's hope in this Keeling curve. I assume everybody's pretty much familiar with it. But what you may not have noticed is, and I say that because I just noticed it after all these years. You may have noticed it way before I did. But that little sawtooth curve, that's the carbon concentration, winter and summer. So the carbon in the atmosphere goes up during the winter because plants are dying and carbon is going back up into the atmosphere. And it goes down during the summer because plants are photosynthesizing. Now the difference between those peaks and troughs is from 6 to 8 parts per million. And it's just a little bit too much in the wrong direction, and we can fix that. So there's hope, and it demonstrates how powerful the Earth is. And if you're in this business, biodiversity business, you hear people saying all the time, well, yeah, it's just plants can't do that. We just hit the hottest May on record, and it's worth noting that the most direct climate symptom we face is heat. Heat brings violent storms, massive fires, severe flood and water shortages, scarcity-driven conflict and migration, premature deaths, inability to work, and sea level rise. What can we do? We don't even know what we have to adapt to. Climate is changing so fast. The only thing we know for sure is that it's all happening faster than scientists ever anticipated. We wish the course of global warming were taking its time, but we recoil from the truly urgent challenges we face. We've had many 10-year windows since 1988 probably. We've got 10 years to do this, and somehow it's a movable 10-year window. At this point, however, those windows are really and truly closing. We must save and expand every patch of wildland that we can for many compelling reasons, including our own survival. The battle of environment versus jobs or housing makes no sense. As the founder of Earth Day, Gaylord Nelson, said, the economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the environment. There are limits to growth, and even before we hit those limits, the constraints constrict. The ability of land to support our demanding behaviors shrinks, and resources from outside become increasingly expensive as everyone worldwide faces the same kind of constraints. How many silver maple forests Whoops. What happened to my silver maple forest? How many silver maple forests can we afford to lose? Not a single one. Some things you can't put a price tag. Right now we're putting price tags on life on Earth. It doesn't seem to occur to us that it would be hard to make a profit on a dead planet. Building large structures and impermeable surfaces provided little protection for Ellicott City outside of Baltimore, but it does give us a glimpse of how overdevelopment works. Ellicott City was deluged by 6 to 10 inches of rain in just 3 to 6 hours on May 27th, resulting in a devastating flash flood. The extreme flooding was made worse by recent development upstream. And you'll note, this is the second 1,000-year flood in 2 years. And we can create safer ground. What if all the rain went directly into healthy, spongy earth? The soils in New England may not be as deep as in the Midwest, but let's see if we can get this to work. But how we manage what we've got can make a difference.
Carbon-rich soils soak up heavy rain.
Can you hear that?
Carbon-depleted soils don't.
When there was quite a bit of rain, the water would run down the hill, and there would be water laying in the bottom of that slough. And now I get better water infiltration. That doesn't happen to me anymore.
In 1993, we could only infiltrate 1/2 inch of rainfall per hour. Now, we can infiltrate over 8 inches of rainfall per hour. Think of the ramifications of that. I tell people, it's not how much moisture and rainfall you get, it's how much in your soil hold.
So here's another quiz. So ambient temperature of 90 degrees took the temperature from under the bushes by the house all the way across the lawn to the asphalt. The quiz is, what do you think the temperature difference was between the coolest and the warmest spot in that photo? Just Fahrenheit. We want
20 degrees.
20.
50.
50. 80. Who said that? What, are you some kind of nut?
30.
No, you've seen this before. No, the difference was 60 degrees Fahrenheit. The asphalt was 128 degrees, kind of a feeble black body, and under the bushes it was 68 degrees. So we can change the temperature even with elevated greenhouse gases. How am I doing on time? Nevada is the driest state in the U.S. with approximately 10 inches of rain a year. This is what Susie Creek looked like in 1989. This is Susie Creek 25 years later with good land management. After 4 years of drought, when everybody else was having to truck water in for their cattle, it's a vibrant, vital grassland ecosystem that Nevada used to be. We can do things in cities. I'm sure most of you know about depaving in Somerville. There's a depave.org, which follows depaving all across the country. And you pull up the asphalt, and in Massachusetts, it just takes a year to get all the flowers back. They come back by themselves because we've got so much rain. But even in drier habitats, you can do the same thing. It just takes a little longer, and of course, you use native plants. And in Maryland, there's a Maryland rain garden. We have rain gardens here too. Instead of the water going into sewer drains, you just change the angle of the road a little bit, and it goes into soils with plants, and everybody's happier. And in sum, we need to heed what nature wants to do, to respect it and understand that human needs are secondary to the demands of the natural world. For without biodiversity, healthy biodiverse ecosystems, we humans and many other species lose our life support systems until there's nothing left. In other words, when we adapt to the demands of nature in all of our behavior, notwithstanding the seductive siren song of a world without limits, our lives can be very, very good. Preserving alewife is a great place to start. That's a work. Work. Technology will save us. And it behooves us to keep in mind that nature comes first or collapse comes next.